So we're continuing with our Mass Effects tutorials. I'm going to create a box, and I'm going to create a teapot, and let's make another teapot. Okay, so we've got three objects. I want the teapots to fall from the sky. I want them to be able to collide with each other as they fall. Okay, so in order to make these animate, I'm going to convert them into Mass Effect's rigid bodies. So if I select all three objects, and I'm going to go up here to set selected as dynamic rigid body. A dynamic rigid body is a body that is subject to the laws of physics, so gravity, collisions, winds, etc. are all going to have their effect on a dynamic rigid body. And I'm going to click on Start Simulation, and you can see they fall and knock each other over. I can go into the settings for these and I can make changes to their density, bounciness, etc. So let's click on the Mass Effects toolbar, and this allows me to make collective changes to a lot of different options. So we've got the scene settings, simulation tools for playback, and the object properties. So in the object properties I can adjust, say, things like density, bounciness, etc. So let's bring the bounciness up to 1, and let's run our simulation once more, and we get a more bouncy simulation. As with the cloth, if we're happy with the simulation, we can click on Bake, and that will convert it to keyframes. So that's basic dynamic rigid body. Next one we're going to look at is to do something a little bit more complex. So let's delete all of those. This time we're going to create a box in the top view, which is going to be a dynamic rigid body, and we are going to create a sphere which is going to come and knock it over. So I'm going to create a sphere and do something like that. The sphere is going to move up to here. I'm going to do a little auto key animation with the sphere. So in the first kind of we'll say 15 frames, that sphere is going to be thrown pretty much from there to there. So the sphere is going to go through effectively the box. Now with that sphere, I'm going to make it into not a dynamic rigid body, because this one is going to have the cause value, so it's going to cause things to happen rather than be affected, and that's a kinematic rigid body. So let's click on kinematic rigid body, and we now have our sphere set up. Now if I just play my simulation straight out now, you can see it's knocking that box right out of the park. So let's rewind and maybe go to make that sphere have a bit of a slower animation. So I'm going to take the second keyframe to frame 25 instead, and I could also choose to go in with that selected and change, say for example, the object properties, so increase or reduce the mass to something a bit more normal. So I'll just do a preset of rubber, and that gives us a lower mass. So now let's play our animation again. And we can see that we're knocking over the box. Okay, a more sophisticated version of this though is coming up next.